anything about it.
But that means when your orchestra piece, the reason it's falling on its face is that you don't have a pedal, you don't have an orchestra. I said that was to me a fantastic idea, to pedal the orchestra by way of orchestration.
You mean the subject of the piece is
pedal?
I see.
The whole engineering of the piece was putting my pedal, 3 pedals.
3 pedals.
3 pedals, like this. I could have the pedal, you know, I don't know, soft pedal, a quarter, this, all kinds of pedaling in terms of coming through. That was the image of the piece. How do I have an orchestral piece with the light coming through a little bit? The cheer, what's that time? Yes.
So that
I'm sorry to talk so much.
No, it's
but I am the guest in your country.
That is it. You're supposed to talk. But it means that the fact that there is no silence in that piece has to do with this pattern.
Yes.
I see.
I'm also involved with very vague terminology of revealing and obscuring, known in the cheap magician trade as now you see it, now you don't. Now you hear it, now you don't. Levels of revealing and obscuring. Because what I'm doing is, being that I feel that, according to Wittgenstein, that everything is a question of substitution, even though it doesn't work. In other words, you can't substitute one thing for another thing because someone else does it and you think it's going to work. But being that we try to substitute, I'm very involved in finding a substitution essentially for harmony.
But it's too harmony. Another harmony.
No, not by way of the notes,
How?
like Matisse.
You should explain this.
Color planes. Instrumental harmony. That acts like harmony in terms of tension, relaxation. Color planes. Not the indirectly. Not designs, but like harmony. Cézanne. Just tones of color acting as a new type of palette of harmony. But glued by, that's why I had the 4 vibraphones in this orchestral piece, because the 4 vibraphones acted like an axis that you could not pinpoint, the pitch. And then everything was off.
In fact, they use the bell all the time.
So they're supposed to. So that, in a sense, was that I was involved in that piece. The piece tonight is very, very different. It's the most virtuoso piece I've ever written. And it has to do of the confusion between object and subject. Where you would sit there and say, is that a violin? Was that a cello? Was that a piano? The transformation of what was always considered fixed into creating situations that create not a confusion, but create that degree of integration by way of orchestration that we rely notes and forms to do.
Have you long pieces need more time to compose than shorter pieces?
No, less time.
How does that work?
Because I think that the long piece, for example, the orchestral piece was written, it's actually nearly half an hour, but it should be about 27 minutes or so. I feel that the shorter the piece, it's like a poem. I think of short pieces, not as short. I I think Stravinsky had the right word for the Huxley variation. I think it's one of the great pieces in the 20th century. It's not even, it's almost 5 minutes. Almost 5, it's an incredible amount of music in almost 5 minutes. And he did not use the word short, he used it as concise. And I feel that it's a different kind of thing. I think it's another kind of music, a short piece, with different kind of material, with different kind of aspects of memory. The longer piece for me is more in real time. It's more what music is essentially imitates, the novel. We even wait like the novel, from left to right. We tell our story like a novel. We get involved in details like a novel. And I feel that the long piece is telling a story more in real time. And I feel that a Mozart symphony is not in real time. It's a constructed time. Just like the light structures of, say, of a Giotto is not real light. It's a constructed light.
When we talk about time, is there could you, when you compose yourself, say that where is the border about going from constructed time to real time? Is there
I play with that. I play with that. For example, if you have a steady state, I once realized this in a piece I wrote in the 70s. We're lucky enough to have Jan Williams in Buffalo, and I went into his great percussionist, and went into the studio. And I was writing a piece in which, an important piece at the time for oboe, flute, and percussion. He was going to do the percussion. And about every 5 years I do a little research. I walk into the percussion studio, but with an idea about not looking for, you know, something to hit, but actually with a sound image in mind. And I had a sound image in mind, and I let him realize it for me. And I don't remember what it was, but he was beating the triangle and the ride together at the same time. Just I wanted to hear how it beat, if he could do it elegantly. And it was fine. It was with some modifications, it was fine. And I was listening to it for a long time. And I was writing down, I borrowed a stopwatch, and I was writing down how long I could possibly listen without feeling I have to do something. And I think it was over 5 minutes. That's a long time, a very long time. I then took the notes that I had, the image, so to speak. I brought it home, and I just pasted it on the wall. And then I started to write the flute and the elbow. And I used this image. It couldn't last 5 seconds. Alone, it was 5 minutes. The minute, it's like society. I always like that remark about psychoanalysis and its function. That if you dance alone, actually, it's Nietzsche. That if you dance alone, you can make any step you want. The minute you have to dance with someone else, it has to be coordinated.
So this was very elegant example how real time moved into being constructed time.
Constructed
this
time.
trio.
Yes.
Now when you start composing probably the piece which we will hear tonight, where I suppose you had in mind to become a long piece, which is the other direction, I think. How did this go? Where do you go from the border, from the construction?
Well, that was essentially the metaphor of this piece. Constructed time, real time. And real time is essentially when you start to, when you interfere with the surface, either by notes or by orchestration. shapes that take you out of real time into a constructed time.
Will this be also in constructed time tonight? The 16
Both.
Both can be combined.
No, I used the two elements. There were two things working in counterpoint, real time and constructed time. And real time would be when the steady state is in real time, when I let it float, and degrees of letting it float.
You pass from one time into the other during
Yes,
this.
yes.
I see.
The reason I say this all has to do with your remark about my music changing. I don't want to make the confessions of a 60s composer or something. I heard one the other day where somebody in Buffalo gave a confession how he was upset with the Lutoslawski loop and how he was disillusioned. He thought that was going to save music, the Lutoslawski loop. And he made this confession how he can no longer write a loop. The problem with concepts is that they're usually monolithic. And one creates one's own stylistic barrier. You can't get out of the monolith. And it works. That's why everybody composes. If you take away the monolithic barrier of a composer, it'll be taking away a gun from Al Capone. I mean, it works. One can't get into the fallacy. You can't walk into a dark room and say, how dark is it? It's dark. That's all. It's based on very concrete things. You can't say, well, it's very dark. It's not that dark. It's getting dark. It's dark. It's enough. So the monolith is a terrific generality, even when it's specific. Because if it gets too general, the monolith crumbles. If it gets too specific, the monolith overloads. So it's our genius to make that compromise between the generality and the specificity of the monolith. It was this understanding of the 60s monolith, which I did very well too. Very monolithic pieces I wrote, which was my stylistic barrier. And I noticed that it wasn't the notes that did it. It wasn't the fact that you want to use major sevenths. Everybody uses major sevenths and the music sounded different. Velez uses major sevenths, it doesn't sound like Scheinberg, and I use major sevenths and it didn't sound like Stockhausen. So it wasn't the palette of the major sevenths, it was the context of the major sevenths. So it wasn't the English language that was determining this phenomenon. It was the notational monolith. Now, the way Cage did it, and Earle Brown did it, the way a lot of composers in the 60s did it, by mixing the notation, the tight and the loose, in the Boulesian sense of the term, of the tight and the loose. I didn't feel solved the situation because they're still in the same style. Except at one moment the style was tight, and at another moment the style was loose. They had the stylistic barrier. Because if they left the notational consistency, well, these are they were drunk. But it was by leaving the stylistic consistency of the Renaissance that made it possible to become a Cézanne. Because these are broken linearities and also broken in style. Okay, so that is what and then I decided, I got very involved, and I learned most of this from my students. I saw in the sense that that there was no matter whether it's a slow movement or a fast movement, it was the same kind of notation. Which is not the case, for example, with Weber. Because with Weber, from movement to movement, I noticed that the notation changed. Like in the string quartet, the Opus 28. Where one movement, because of the role, would be geometric. Another movement would be much more vague. Because of the form, essentially. The form changed. See, we're not involved with the change of form the way they were. The young people especially. They don't know about Weber's form, they know about his role. So because of the form that changed, his notation changed. And then I got involved with changing, even Messiaen changes as if he's drunk. And it sounds as if he's drunk. But the notation is the same. So that doesn't work either. So I felt that every time I would make a move, I got involved with what I would refer to as building up an arsenal. I don't want to use a militaristic term, but let's say, take a nicer, more attractive term. A repertoire of moves. And I started to investigate rhythmic images. And the one that helped me most was not a composer, but was Beckett. How Beckett helped me here was that he would write something in English and then translate it into French. And then translate the French back. Obviously, I could have gone to a Beethoven variation and learned how to change the rhythmic language because, you know, in terms of the context of the piece. But Beethoven didn't help me because it was still on an ictus. So I decided that I want to go along with very minute variations, but the rhythmic language changes as if I'm going into another language. Even though it sounds the same thing done again, but with a soft edge. Something done with a harder edge. This does exist. Stravinsky, its placement, the way we place things in different measures, the same ostinato as it's going. But that didn't help me, because again, it was how to be brilliant within a monolith.
To be concrete, in the notation you find the differences also?
Yes.
So that I agree that
it's there, but it's not there much in music. It's there perhaps, I can think of only one piece, and a hammer clavier. What happens in notation is it gets faster and faster and faster. That was a very important piece for me, in times that there was something wrong with the monolith. Because I just can't write, a cello-rondo. That's not going to make it a cello-rondo. You see. So those are my concerns. And the haunted house is the big problem is and it doesn't, you see all these bad movies, Poltergeist? You buy a haunted house, nobody tells you it's haunted. You paint it up, you put it in a swimming pool. You put the swimming pool right on top of the graveyard. I think that's what Wittgenstein meant by substitution.
swimming pools of graveyard.
Yes, and then we come up, graveyard. And that's the big dilemma. That's the big dilemma. If you say to a composer, how do you find things for yourself? No one wants to find things for themselves because the whole history, we're all middle-class people writing middle-class music to some degree. Or if we want to shock the middle class, they're the only people who are going to shock. And then maybe we're making a mistake. Let me make one more insult against Luciano Berio. Speaking about middle-class composers writing middle-class music. Years ago, he got a to the Milan opera house, his town, Milan. So they start to make noise during his piece. And all the bourgeoisie started to fight. Quiet! Quiet! We can't hear Berio.
It's almost true. Almost.
But it's true enough. It backfired.
It's very useful.
It's useful.
Yeah,
It backfired.
I don't agree about Weber. Have you done not agree? No, we haven't done. But I don't think that
Because the piano tune.
That's right. We wait on him.
Yes, when the piano tune ends, we finish.
That's good. Well, I'll feel he's
No, I can see the piano tuner is already, the piano tuner is going very slow.
It's a slow one.
It's a slow piano tune, so I think we'll finish before it gets slow.
Last, well, I want to say, I don't agree about Weber's notation. You said, and it's a real composer's subject, of course, that he finds the notation out of flow. I don't agree at all with that. I think specifically the late Weber, where he puts more and more necessary design, he finds the notation out of tempo, about basic structural units, and makes them the most efficient solution. Unlike Weber. More like that. Heavy structures.
But I find that his notation is much more flexible than say Schoenberg's notation.
But he has better ideas than Schoenberg. It's better music.
Well, I think it suffices to say that wherever his notation came from, it was flexible, to at least notice it. While Schoenberg notation never advanced beyond lines.
Einstein.
Lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter how the symmetry or the asymmetry and the subdivision.
Yeah, they're all waltzes.
Yes. That's one of the problems. He had his own barriers of style. But the barriers came because of a lack of being flexible. Terrific lack of being flexible.
Yeah, Weber was more flexible.
So that's a very interesting subject, rather than talk about contemporary music, your music or my music. We could just think about the inflexibility of certain music and how we could see that as a possibility. I mean, if we heard that Beethoven had berry, we don't go out and cultivate berry as a virtue. Someone told me about Beethoven. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'd like to leave you with this rumor. I'd like to leave you with this rumor of Beethoven, that he was arrested for being a peeping Tom. Someone else looked at that. Oh, I guess he was arrested. I'd like to leave you with that. I once left I told you, I don't know if I told you, I talk so much, I forget what I say sometimes. But I was once at Yale University, I mentioned this at dinner. I was giving a lecture at Yale University when that book on Weber came out, saying that he was a Nazi. And I always loved to take away all illusions from the student. And Yale, Weber was a very high composer. So in my wallet, I carried this big article from the New York Sunday Times, how Weber was a Nazi and all the things he said. And I started to read it at the seminar. And one fellow got up and he started to cry. Why are you telling us this? This is not a political discussion. I said, a Nazi, not a politician. He said, don't you know what a Nazi is? No, I'm not supposed to know him here. I want to hear about Weber. He ran out of the seminar because I brought up. But you see, we live in modern times. And to say that Beethoven was a peeping Tom, we accept it. It's the most natural thing in the world, isn't it?
Terrible.
Can you imagine saying it someplace in Leipzig in 1850?
So we made progress. Thank you very much. We'll be again.
Who has my score? Let me get it.
Yes.
Hij speelt. Pas op hoor, er zitten banden die waarschijnlijk wel goed zijn. Die